Brett Porcio, TopVelocity.net. We're going to look at Jeff's 3x pitch biometrics here from camp. Taking him into his leg lift. Okay. You can see weight really shifting where the drive leg femur, the stance leg femur, is pushing back towards second base. So a little too aggressive with the lift leg to really throw too much momentum back. We want to keep that momentum inside the drive leg. So I'd like to see that stance leg femur, or not femur, tibia, the lower leg, inside the heel, like the knee almost inside the heel, so we can get that momentum going. So you can see coming out of leg lift, not a lot of movement out of the back leg position, not a lot of hip abduction. If we look at the graphs here, and I went to the pelvis, and I can see that's pelvis position. Let's look at hip angles. There we go. We can see the abduction of the right leg is 15 degrees. We would want to be right before front foot starts to open here. We would want that green to be at about 45. So 45 degrees. So we have to take the hips and fall forward and down at the same rate. And that's why if you lift and throw too much of your momentum back, then when you go to open up, you're just going to start rotating, and that's what's happening. You can see back leg, knee turning over, front foot landing here, and everything going early. So let's look at the sequencing. How does that affect the sequencing of the hips, trunks, and shoulders? We're looking in a linear sequencing and a rotational sequencing. Okay. We can see as after Jeff hits front foot strike here, you can see the glove tucking really early, so way early trunk rotating, which is going to also affect your sequencing. But we can see that on the left side, the red is the hip, and then the green is the trunk, and the yellow is the arm. You can see the hip going first, and then the arm almost going before the trunk. So the sequencing, more than likely because that early glove tuck is pulling the trunk out well early. Now the arm's dragging from behind. And then if we look at the linear, we don't see much of a spike. We see 4 meters per second through the hip to 5, a little 5.7 with the trunk. We should be seeing like a huge jump, like 4 to 6, 7. So it's just a good indication that's very rotational, out of sequence. If we had more separation, meaning on the left with the angular, if we had the green or the red going way before the green went off, potentially it would allow the linear separation to really peak and accelerate. So you can see the front leg opening, causing everything to go early, really kills power. You're not seeing a lot of trunk power, specifically linear. And with the early trunk rotation, you're seeing the sequencing all over the place. You're seeing the hip just before the trunk, but the arm, the forearm, is actually going before the trunk, which should be going after. We ultimately want to see hip, trunk, arm in that sequence, and then we'd see a bigger jump and a spike in the linear power going forward. That would be key. And then you can see at pitch release, not much drive of front leg, just whatever was there at front foot strike. You see even the trunk going spinning considerably off to glove side. I wouldn't say too excessively, but still you can see it's just mostly rotating off. Let's look at the position of the chest. It's a 18 degrees, so not too bad, what we call contralateral tilt, but you can see the trunk is just really wanting to spin. I mean, if we take pitch release, it's probably somewhere around right there. Forward trunk tilt is not too bad. It's just the power up to that position wasn't that optimal. Specifically, if we just go back to the beginning, where the front foot opened up early, back leg just turned over, so there's really no drive power here. If we looked at the ground force, we'd see little ground force. There's no power of the back leg out of the front leg to really accelerate the upper body, which is really where the energy is. That's where we've got to get the energy. So Jeff needs to really focus on back leg power to front leg power, and separating and sequencing that up the chain, and that's where he's going to be making big velocity, or has a potential to make a big velocity jump.